The morning air was still heavy with the scent of last night's rain, the sidewalks shining as if polished for the new day. A thin veil of mist clung to the shop windows, and the city carried the sleepy hum of people hurrying to work. I walked slower than everyone else, almost deliberately, as though I was afraid to wake up from the dream I was still living. My heels clicked against the wet pavement, each step echoing in my head. Married, married, married. Less than 24 hours had passed since I said my vows to Daniel, but the memory of the church lights reflecting on his nervous smile was so vivid it felt like it was still happening. My hand rose almost unconsciously, twisting the ring around my finger. It caught the sunlight in sharp flashes, like a signal only I could see. I should have been thinking about the honeymoon we hadn't yet planned, or the family brunch waiting for us later that afternoon. Instead, my thoughts wandered to the smallest detail, the way Daniel had insisted on this particular ring. He told me it was special, one of a kind. I had believed him instantly, because why wouldn't I? You don't start a marriage questioning the symbol of it. A sudden voice shattered the rhythm of my steps. That ring. I stopped. A woman was standing a few feet away on the sidewalk, her posture rigid, her gaze locked on my hand as though nothing else in the world existed. Her coat was buttoned unevenly, her hair scraped back in a way that made her features look harsher. I might have thought she was a stranger asking for directions, if her tone hadn't carried so much venom. That ring was stolen from me. The words were so direct, so sharp, that for a moment I laughed nervously. Excuse me. She stepped closer, her shoes splashing through a shallow puddle. That's my ring. I can prove it. My first instinct was to pull my hand back, hiding the gold band against my palm. Heat rose to my face as I glanced around. A few people had slowed down, curious. The last thing I wanted was to look like a thief in my own wedding glow. You must be mistaken, I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. This was my wedding ring. My husband gave it to me yesterday. The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't blink. There's an engraving inside. 3 letters, ERJ. Tell me I'm wrong. I froze. My throat tightened as if the damp air had turned to smoke. She couldn't have known that. Daniel had never explained the initials. He'd brushed them off, saying the jeweler had once made it for someone else, but the design was too beautiful to pass up. I hadn't pushed him for more. I hadn't wanted to ruin the romance. How do you know that? I whispered. Her eyes softened for the briefest second, then hardened again. Because it was my family's. It went missing when my home was broken into last year. I filed a report. I've been searching for it ever since. She reached into her bag with trembling fingers and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. She unfolded it with care, as if she had done so 100 times before. She held it up, and I found myself staring at an official police report. The description was almost identical: gold band, unique curve, engraving, ERJ. The sounds of the city dulled, replaced by the thundering of my heartbeat. My ring finger burned under the weight of the band. I thought of Daniel, his insistence, his evasive explanation. What if it hadn't been romance? What if it had been something else entirely? You should talk to your husband, the woman said, her tone low, almost pitying. Because if he gave you that ring, then you don't know who you married. Her words clung to me like wet clothes as she turned and disappeared into the moving crowd. I stood motionless, bouquet slipping slightly from my hand, unsure if the ground beneath me was still solid. The world blurred, and yet the ring on my finger seemed to glow brighter, almost taunting me. My breath shook as I whispered the question out loud, afraid of the answer that might come. Had Daniel built our marriage on a lie, starting with the very ring that bound us? I didn't make it home right away. I wandered for nearly an hour, circling blocks without realizing where my feet were taking me. Every glance at the ring made me feel both guilty and betrayed, as if I had been tricked into wearing evidence of something I didn't understand. By the time I reached our apartment, my palms were damp and my mind was spinning with questions. Daniel was at the kitchen counter, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee like nothing in the world was wrong. His smile lit up when he saw me, but it faltered almost immediately. "You look pale," he said. "What happened?" I set the bouquet down on the table a little too forcefully. Someone stopped me on the street today. She said this ring was stolen. She even showed me a police report. His body went still, his hand hovering midair above the cup. For a moment, he looked like a child caught sneaking out past curfew. Then, just as quickly, his face hardened. "That's ridiculous," he muttered. "She was probably running some scam. People do that, Arya. They prey on newlyweds." I wanted to believe him, I really did. But the woman had known about the engraving. "She knew the initials inside the band," I said quietly. "She recited them before I said anything." Daniel's jaw tightened. He finally looked at me directly. "Because it's a vintage piece. It's not unusual for there to be an engraving. I told you already, there was a story behind it. Do you not trust me?" The question stung. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said them, defensive, sharp, as if the problem was my doubt instead of his explanation. "I want to trust you," I whispered. "But I need proof. A receipt, a certificate, anything." His face flushed red. He slammed the coffee pot onto the counter, the glass clinking. "You think I would start our marriage by lying to you? I bought the ring from a private collector. Cash. I didn't keep a receipt. That's not a crime." The sound of his raised voice sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't the Daniel who had held me under fairy lights at the reception. This was someone else, someone I wasn't sure I knew. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every micro-expression. If it was just a coincidence, why had he reacted like that? Why did his eyes dart away when I pressed him? By morning, I had my answer, or at least, the beginning of one. Restless, I searched online. It didn't take long before I found a listing buried deep in an old crime report. Stolen property, gold band with engraving ERJ report filed by Emma Richards Johnson. The name hit me harder than I expected. The woman on the street had never told me her name. But now I knew it. Emma Richards Johnson. And then, below the report, a detail that made my stomach drop. The suspect in the burglary had never been identified, but there had been a person of interest. His name wasn't printed, just initials, DM. Daniel Mitchell. My husband. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding so hard it hurt. The possibility I had been trying to deny was staring at me from the screen. The ring wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just some unlucky coincidence. If this report was true, then Daniel wasn't simply lying about the ring. He might have stolen it himself. The next morning, I couldn't look at Daniel the same way. Every gesture, every word carried a shadow. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work, but instead of warmth, I felt only suspicion. The initials in the report, DM, rang in my head like a warning bell. I knew I couldn't confront him again without evidence. So I called the number listed on the old police report. A woman answered. Her voice was steady, deliberate. "This is Emma Richards Johnson," she said. I froze. "We met yesterday. I'm the woman you stopped on the street." There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. "So you're his wife. He really married you." Her words sliced deeper than I expected. I asked her to meet me somewhere neutral, and 2 hours later we sat across from each other in a small cafe. Emma placed a photo on the table, her hand, years younger, wearing the exact same ring now on my finger. "I was engaged once," she said softly. "To Daniel Mitchell. Your husband." The air left my lungs. My fingers gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. "He ended it suddenly," Emma continued. "Disappeared. Weeks later, my house was broken into. Jewelry, family heirlooms, all gone. The police never had proof, but I knew. I just didn't think he'd reuse the ring on someone else." I couldn't breathe. Every detail fit too perfectly. Daniel hadn't only stolen a ring. He had recycled a broken promise, disguising it as a new beginning. "Why didn't you warn me sooner?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I tried," she said. But people don't want to hear bad things about the man they love. You would have dismissed me, just like you almost did yesterday. She was right. I had wanted so badly to believe in Daniel that I ignored the cracks. Now the cracks were gaping holes. That night, when Daniel returned home, I watched him carefully. He laughed about work, asked about dinner, slipped his arms around me as if nothing had changed. But I couldn't unsee the truth. When he finally went to shower, I checked his desk drawer, something I had never done before. Inside, beneath envelopes and old receipts, lay another small jewelry box. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a second ring. Different design, but unmistakably feminine. And tucked beneath it, a photo of Daniel with another woman I didn't recognize. The betrayal was no longer a question. It was a fact. I didn't confront him right away. Instead, I waited, letting the truth settle inside me until it no longer felt like a wound but a weapon. The second ring, the photo of him with another woman, it was enough to end everything. But I wanted to hear him admit it. The next evening, I placed the jewelry box on the kitchen table. When Daniel walked in, his face drained of color. "Where did you find that?" he asked, voice low. "In your drawer," I said steadily. "Who is she?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time, I saw panic in his eyes. Not guilt, panic. "She's no one," he muttered. "Just someone I knew before you." "Before me? Or during me?" My voice cracked, but I held my ground. "And the ring on my finger, did you steal it? Did you take it from Emma?" He slammed his hand on the table, making the box rattle. "You don't understand. I had debts. I couldn't give you the life you wanted without shortcuts. I thought if we got married, everything would finally settle." "So you built our marriage on lies," I whispered. His silence was the only answer I needed. I slipped the ring from my finger and placed it on the table beside the box. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. "I won't stay in a marriage that started with theft and betrayal. You don't get to drag me down with you." For a moment, he just stared at me, breathing heavily. Then, quietly, he said, "You'll regret this." Maybe I would. But not as much as I'd regret staying. 2 weeks later, the annulment papers were signed. I returned Emma's ring to her, watching the relief wash over her face. It felt like closing a circle that had never been mine to carry. I thought that was the end, my clean break, my rebirth. But one morning, a letter arrived at my door with no return address. Inside was a single photograph: Daniel, standing with the same unknown woman from the jewelry box, holding a child between them. On the back, a handwritten note: "We were never strangers. And neither are you." My hands shook as I stared at the photo. The betrayal was over, but the mystery had just deepened. Because the child in the picture had my eyes.